on Legally Us, Justin Timberlake is arrested for DWI, while Billy Ray Cyrus files a temporary restraining order against his soon-to-be ex. And Clayton Echard is victorious in his paternity case. Got that plus so much more on today's Legally Us. Everyone, and welcome to Legally Us. I'm Christina. That's Nima Rahmani, President and CEO of West Coast Trial Lawyers. Nima, we are, kicking off with some big news this week.
Oh, big news. Breaking news, actually.
Breaking news, yeah. So let's get right into it. So Justin Timberlake was arrested for driving while intoxicated in the Hamptons. So according to ABC News, the singer was taken into custody on June 17th. A Sag Harbor Justice Court official confirmed to Newsday that Justin's charges were DWI related. He was arraigned on Tuesday, June 18th, and released without bail. TMZ reported that he was charged with one count of driving while intoxicated. He was also cited for running a stop sign and failure to keep in his lane. A subsequent court date is scheduled for July 26th. So we heard that Justin does not have to show up for this court date. And why is that? And what do you think will happen during this trial date?
So in a lot of states, if you're charged with a misdemeanor, a lawyer can appear on your behalf. That's how it is in California and in New York. For felony cases, the defendant does have to appear. But that first date, just the arraignment. So Justin will be arraigned on the charges and he'll plead guilty or not guilty. I expect his lawyer to enter a not guilty plea, but to work out some sort of resolution because there was plenty of probable cause here. He blew a stop sign. He wasn't staying in his lane. So this is going to be a tough case for Justin to defend.
Right. He's supposed to be going on tour that day overseas. Is that going to play into this at all? Will he still be allowed to go? I believe the tour kicks off in Poland. So will he be allowed to go overseas during that time?
Yes, Justin will be able to tour. He was released without any bond. So essentially just a promise to appear in court. Now, obviously, if these were more serious charges, if he hit someone or he killed someone, then there may be conditions of release that would require him to stay in the state or to stay in the county even. But because this is just a misdemeanor DWI, Justin will be able to travel for work or for pleasure.
So it's being reported that he refused to take the breathalyzer test. So what exactly does that mean? Why would he do that? And will that play into what happens at the trial as well?
It will. So under the implied consent law, when you get behind the wheel of a vehicle, doesn't matter what state you're in, you consent to a chemical test, usually blood or breath. So if you refuse to do so, that may be an enhancement in the DWI or DUI case. The good thing for Justin, though, is there is no chemical test that can be used against him. So no BAC, but officers can still talk about his driving, his slurred speech, bloodshot, watery eyes, the odor of alcohol, and all the things that would lead someone to believe that you're under the influence or outright drunk. So prosecutors can still get a conviction without a chemical test.
Right. And why would an attorney enter a not guilty plea in this situation when all the evidence suggests otherwise?
Yeah, that plea will be changed. So it's just the initial arraignment. Oftentimes what will happen is at that initial proceeding, the defense attorney will get the discovery. That's all the evidence in the case. So maybe there's body cam footage. Maybe there's a police report. Maybe there's witness testimony. All that will be provided to the defense, and they're going to start negotiating a deal. And once they do, they'll enter a change of plea. They'll change that not guilty to a guilty or a no contest according to the deal that they've worked out with the prosecutors.
Got it. And so what do you foresee happening to Justin? Will he have his license suspended? Will he have to go for a driving course, things like that? What do you foresee happening in this situation?
Exactly, Christina. DWIs are by far and away the most common crime that is committed. And there's a standard offer for a first-time DUI or a first-time DWI with a refusal. So even though Justin's a celebrity, he's going to get the same offer that every other person in this country gets when they're dealing with a first-time DUI. It doesn't matter if you're in the Hamptons or you're in some other part of the country. So he's going to get that first-time deal. And like you said, there's going to be no jail time, but I would expect classes, maybe some driving classes. Sometimes there's mothers against drunk driving classes, suspended or even revoke driver's license for some period of time. I'll have to Uber around, or I'm sure you can afford a driver.
I'm sure.
But these are all things that are going to happen adjusted, just like anyone else.
Just like anybody else. Stars are just like us, I guess. But I'm just like you said, he could afford an Uber. He should have just called for one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, moving on over to Billy Ray Cyrus. So he is seeking a temporary restraining order from Fire Rose. So he alleged in new court documents that his estranged wife made unauthorized purchases using his credit cards and is requesting that she stop using his cards and reimburse him the money that she spent. She made American Express purchases between May 23rd and June 7th and reportedly included Venmo payments, flights, paying $10,000 to the United States Treasury and $50,000 to a law firm. The court documents state that the 37 unauthorized charges are being disputed as fraudulent charges. So Us Weekly confirmed last week that Billy Ray filed for annulment from Fire Rose after 7 months of marriage, citing irreconcilable differences and inappropriate marital conduct as the reason for their split. At the time, court documents revealed that Billy Ray gave Fire Rose 2 days from their split date to move out of their shared home. He paid her $500 a night for 10 days to find temporary housing and agreed to pay her $5,000 a month for Tennessee housing for a period of 90 days or until their annulment is finalized. So why would you need a temporary restraining order against these fraudulent charges?
Yeah, it's not your typical temporary restraining order. We see them when there's violence or a threat of violence. I mean, we've seen them in a lot of these family law cases. This is something that they're asking for on an emergency basis to stop her from spending this money. Now, the judge is going to come in and say, even though the marriage was for a short period of time, in most states, if there's a spouse that's making money and there's a spouse that isn't, the spouse that's making the money may have to pay for the attorney fees for the spouse that can't afford it, and maybe some support for the period of time while the divorce or the annulment is pending. Now, Fire Rose may be exceeding what she's owed, and the judge is going to have to step in and make that decision. But really, all a temporary restraining order means in this particular case is Billy Ray is trying to get a decision on a shortened time period, as opposed to what would happen if it was a normal notice motion that may be heard weeks or sometimes even months later.
Why not just call American Express and just be like, let's, stop payments on my card or stop charges on my card?
That would make sense. Obviously, if you're the primary card holder, you can deactivate or cancel the cards for the other folks. That's something that probably he should have thought of before he filed this motion. That certainly would have been a lot easier than to spend money on lawyers, because we know in these divorces, the lawyers rack up the bills, and in many cases it's just the lawyers who win, not the party.
Right. And then how hard is it to get an annulment? You're 7 months into a marriage. Usually you sometimes hear of annulments, within the first couple weeks or days, but how hard is it to get an annulment?
This is very state specific. Some states don't allow for annulments at all. Others allow it if you're within a certain window, and obviously we're less than a year here. But usually an annulment happens when there's some fraud or there's some lack of capacity, right? The classic case is you're drunk and you're in Vegas and you get married and you don't really even know what you're doing. You annul the marriage, basically cancel it, as opposed to getting a divorce. But some states do allow for a longer annulment window, and I think that's what the case is here.
Right. And it seems like he would get annulment because maybe she cheated during the marriage. Is that rights for annulment usually when you step out on the marriage?
So it really depends on the state. Some states don't allow for fault-based divorce, right? California, for instance, why it doesn't matter whether you cheated or not. Now, I know that doesn't make people feel good, but it doesn't really affect the divorce. But there are states, especially a lot of states in the South, that do allow for fault-based divorce or annulment based on the infidelity of a spouse, and it does change things. So that may be what's going on here.
Yeah, feels like it's about to get really messy. Moving on over to Clayton Echard. We've been talking about this case for quite some time, but his lengthy paternity fight against an ex has come to a close with the court siding with the former bachelor. So his court battle against Laura Owens. They said in this case, the gravamen of Echard's position is that Owens has fabricated her pregnancy, a condition which cannot have resulted from the parties' interactions because, according to Clayton, they never had sexual intercourse. As we know, she said that she was pregnant with his babies, and he denied it from the beginning. The documents continue saying Clayton seeks to have the protective order invalidated based on the alleged fabrication, while Owens essentially argues that even if she was never pregnant, the sexual activity between the two and respondents' subsequent harassing online conduct are sufficient to sustain the order regardless. So the trial resulted in the court agreeing with Clayton. And according to the documents, Laura Owens knowingly presented a false claim, knowingly violated a court order compelling disclosure or discovery such that an award of attorney fees and costs is appropriate. As a result of his victory, Clayton has been granted his petition for non-paternity and will be paid for attorney fees. So he definitely has a win in this situation, but is she in a lot more trouble going forward since she lied to the court?
No question, Christina. This was a huge win for Clayton. And we've been talking about this case for quite some time. And we were getting messages and social media comments saying that Laura Owens is a scammer, a fraudster, and she's done this before. And apparently the court agreed that there was no sexual intercourse whatsoever. And when the court demanded that Owens provide those medical records to show that she was pregnant, she didn't comply. So she is in a world of trouble. She's going to have to pay tens, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars in attorney's fees in this case. And now, whenever anyone Googles her name, they're going to know that this was a false claim. So this was very serious, but big win for Clayton.
Big win for Clayton. But what would happen to her? Are they like, can the state then press charges against her for fabricating in the court of law? Will she have to, what will be her penalty for that?
Potentially, and it's up to prosecutors in Arizona, but they could certainly charge her for extortion, trying to shake down Clayton and get money from him. So This is something that prosecutors and judges don't look favorably upon. It'll be interesting to see if prosecutors pick up the case or the judge refers the case for prosecution and what they do with respect to Laura Owens, because this is not something that you can do, especially if those public comments were true and she's tried to do this before and to target other men.
Yeah. Any chance that she could get jail time for something like this? And, maybe, I don't know what her financial situation is, but if she can't repay this money, then what would happen?
She could face jail time if she's charged with extortion. Normally in this country, you can't afford to pay, whether it's a bill or even attorney fees ordered by the court. That's not a basis to jail someone. There are some potential exceptions when it comes to being held in contempt for child custody, child support payments, but that's not the case here. So if Owens can't pay, she probably won't go to jail, but that doesn't mean she could be prosecuted for extortion for this act with respect to Clayton and any others that she's committed.
Such an interesting case. It really is. All right. Well, Nima, we had a lot to get to this week. So thank you for breaking it all down as always.
Of course. Thanks, Christina. I'll see you next week.
See you next week.